Hey there guys, thanks for tuning in and welcome to another video. As you can see, I'm not in the office at the moment, back home for a little while, so I do apologise about the lighting situation too. It looks like I'm all red. For lack of finding a better light, all I could find was this old school light here that I used to have. So guys, this video is an interview that was conducted last week. Another YouTuber, his name is Adam Stokes. Lovely guy, he's an Australian guy. From Canberra. He's been YouTubing for a while. He's a cryptocurrency YouTuber. Very smart guy, very educated guy, and wanted to do an interview with me and just ask me a bunch of questions about, my own journey with YouTube and my journey with crypto entrepreneurship, and then some questions around cryptocurrency itself and Bitcoin and kind of my take on where things are at the moment, and we get a little bit into economics and stuff as well. It was a really good interview. Adam asked some really good questions, and I enjoyed spending time with him and answering these questions. And look, I thought it was a good value interview, so I'm posting it here as well. It's also on Adam's channel. I'm going to leave a link down to Adam's channel down in the description. If you like the interview, please go and show him some support and subscribe. I know he'd appreciate that. He's a high quality YouTuber, so the more high quality YouTubers we have in this space, covering cryptocurrencies from a rational and objective standpoint, I think is going to be better for the overall space. So look, with that being said, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate your time. If you liked the video, don't forget to give us a like. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. So yeah, thanks again. Hope you enjoy the interview, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.
G'day crypto goers, greetings from the nation's capital. We have an amazing guest here today. Beau from Cryptocurrency Australia has agreed to speak to me and talk all things crypto. Beau, I'm honoured. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, no worries at all, Adam. It's a pleasure, mate, and thanks for the invitation.
Beau, let's get straight to it. Are you Satoshi?
Most definitely not. And happy to admit that. I wouldn't want that burden on my shoulders.
Yeah, mate, look, this Craig Wright thing has been quite interesting. I was talking to you recently about your last video, and there is an absolute influx of videos out there about this whole Photoshi saga. In your last video, you mentioned it could be bad for the crypto community, but that is the brand of crypto. But I was thinking, well, perhaps it could actually be good for the brand in the sense that we've seen the community bond together. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree on the fact that it bonds the community together, and in that video it was probably a little bit hard for me to articulate, but what I was saying was it is good for the community, but it's not so good for the outside world. So what we've seen in the past 2 years is we've seen a rapid maturation of the market, with more institutions getting involved, both in terms of developing investment products. So you've got major players involved. We've got Fidelity, we've got Barked, just to name a couple. Coinbase custody. We've seen it go from kind of, like that cyberpunk, fringe, crazy nerd people getting into crypto to trying to raise the optics in terms of a professional environment to get new people involved. That's from an investment perspective. That's not so much from a user adoption perspective. So I think events like this are not so good from an optics perspective when looking at that demographic that a lot of businesses are trying to get involved into crypto. But certainly from a community perspective, it only reinforces what has happened so many times. And it's actually, I might add, it's what a lot of businesses and players in crypto underestimate time and time again, is how strong this community is, how quick they bind together, and how it's really come from a libertarian ideological point of view that is so strong. It's so grassroots. It's impermeable to attacks. So you really have to understand the crypto culture from a business perspective if you're, looking to become, I guess, more involved or more entrepreneurial in crypto. And it's what a lot of people, quite frankly, underestimate, is how strong this community is.
Yeah, I was recently up at, well, I didn't actually go to EdCon. I was in Sydney on Friday. And as I understand it, I think you're the #2 crypto presenter on YouTube in Australia. We've got Nuggets News, which is #1 with 40,000 subscribers. And from what I could find, it was kind of hard to research it, but I did look into it. You've got over 20,000. I think you've got 25,000 subscribers.
24,
I think this makes you...
yeah.
Yeah, that's within 2 years, as I understand it. So when I was actually up at that event on Friday, it was amazing how easy it was to strike a conversation with everyone. And it goes back to what you're talking about, this crypto community. But I wanted to seek your advice or thoughts on these seminars or these get-togethers in the crypto space. So I know that you've hosted at a lot of them, and I've pretty much watched, I think, all of your work. And I've seen you up on the stage presenting, and there's a great think tank there. But they seem really expensive. So for the average guy who's just in the crypto space going, do I spend $500 to go up to EdCon? Are they worth it? And who should spend that much money? And why are they so expensive?
That's a very good question, actually. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I think it is an issue, to be honest. And, you know, when I started attending these conferences, these were kind of the first industry conferences I had really ever attended. So I was in energy before. I was in a completely different industry before I got into crypto, and I never really attended conferences. So when I started attending them as a speaker, I didn't have to wear those costs, but I started noticing some of them, the costs were just exorbitant. But one thing to keep in mind too is different conferences have a different target audience. Some are targeting investors. So some are geared towards the financial sector, and generally because the financial sector has a lot of money, they're going to have inflated prices because of that, right? They want investors. The value proposition to the investors is come. You might, you know, see some startup companies pitching. You might network with some other investors. You might get some good opportunities come out of it, and so they will raise the ticket price because of that. But I did notice that the EdCon ticket prices were really expensive. I think I saw 850 US or 850 Australian or something like that. So for the average person, how much value are you going to get spending that kind of money? To be honest, you're not going to get much more value out of what is available to you on the internet. And most of these talks are recorded and will become available afterwards. You're better off looking for local groups on Facebook or looking for meetup groups and going down to the pub and having a few beers and getting to know people and talking there. You're probably going to get more substantive conversation out of that, because it's a more natural and genuine crowd, rather than, you know, a lot of ICOs and a lot of companies pitching and a lot of, do you know what I mean? It can get somewhat political in that environment. But I think if you just find some kind of local meetup group, especially with maybe a couple of people that have been in the crypto space for a while, you're going to get tremendous value, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Agreed. Well, that's probably reassuring, because there's a lot. I guess I'm lucky because I am in a position where I could attend some of them, but I just can't see the cost-benefit analysis. And when I do the cost-benefit analysis, I can't see the gain in that. And I agree with you that if you just sort of go to the pub, and I actually did one of these in Canberra. I did a crypto Canberra club community meetup, and it wasn't a huge turnout, but the vibe in the room was really good. And in the end, believe it or not, the pub actually gave us not only a free space, but free food for doing that. So it was the complete opposite to spending all this money to go up to, well, because then you've got to put travel in, because a lot of these conferences, of course, are in the big cities, which makes sense. But I didn't get to see Vitalik dancing at my meetup. Did you see that dance?
I did. And to be honest, it was cringe-inducing.
There's so many videos out there. If you watch a few of these videos, but Nuggets News he was very good, because of course Nuggets News, he got to meet him, and he was talking about at one of his videos the kind of weirdness of the crypto community, and I think we let that one go through to the keeper, because a guy of that age who can, you know, speak to an audience, to a global audience, whilst wearing rainbows and unicorns on his t-shirt, I think he's kind of free to do whatever he likes.
True.
So I was wondering, you mentioned that you had a podcast, and I looked at that podcast and looked at your history. But just for my viewers, can you tell us how you got into crypto? I know you've got an engineering background, but does that mean you've given up your engineering career, if you will, to get into this full time?
For the most part, yeah. So I guess on the first point, how I got into crypto. So I was actually investing before crypto. Not to the same extent, not to the same level in terms of the amount of energy and time I was putting into research and how committed I was, but I was investing prior to crypto. And it was funny, the timing. So it was a combination of many years for me, kind of having an entrepreneurial drive in me, really wanting to get out of this. I had a great career, a really good career, a really good job, but I always wanted to test myself in the world of entrepreneurship and see how I could go. So I had that drive in me, and around that time I was doing my master's in project management through UNSW, and they had some awesome electives. And I had actually
the same uni.
Yeah. Well, I did it through the Adva campus in Canberra.
Me too.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
A small world. Yeah,
Small.
so I did my masters. Gosh, who would have thought? I
Yes.
thought you were Queensland based.
So my undergrad degree, my engineering degree, I did through University of Southern Queensland.
Yeah.
And then my postgrad studies I was doing through UNSW. And I'd done half of my masters, and I was getting into the second half. And the good thing about the Adva campus, as you would have known, is there were some really, really cool subjects. And I was getting into like capability options analysis, which is like defense stuff, and scenario planning as well, which is like really, really cool. You have to have a very, it teaches you to have a very strategic mind in terms of thinking forwards in these subjects. And the next one I was enrolled in was investment probabilities. And I was like, this is going to be very cool because it's going to teach me some statistical methodologies for actually calculating opportunities in investment, more from a quantitative standpoint. So anyway, I was halfway through that, and I was at work one day and I just saw this thing about Ethereum and how it had gone up however many 1,000%. And bells started ringing, like, firstly, thousands of percent gains. I mean, what on earth brings that? Second, Ethereum, like, what is this? And I guess to my generation, being playing games growing up and stuff, I was so intrigued. So I started just spending a lot of time researching it, spent a lot of time studying it, and we just went down this rabbit hole, and it has been ever since. And so when I started Cryptocurrency Australia, I just the timing was very lucky. It was when the market was at the beginning of a bull run, and we started getting a lot of attention. The channel grew very, very quickly. I was a lot of luck, to be honest. Started getting invited to conferences, and that's when I decided I was going to try my hand at entrepreneurship. So I started a consultancy. And I started a company, and Cryptocurrency Australia became Cryptocurrency Australia Media, and I launched a website and a brand, and I was going to build out this brand into blogging and video and all this kind of stuff as well. And that's kind of where the journey started and where it's come to today.
And so that's your full-time living now? Like crypto is it? This is how you get your bread and butter?
Yes, it is. So I also was doing advisory work. I got invited to join Masternode Ventures, which is an Australian blockchain incubator, where they kind of take on really high quality projects and throw some really knowledgeable guys at it and dive in and try and make these projects the best they can be. So that, combined with my consultancy, combined with Cryptocurrency Australia, has allowed me, up to this point at least, to be crypto full time.
That's mate, that's an amazing story, because as I mentioned before this talk, I've been with you, not directly, but certainly just on your journey from day one. I remember some of your first videos, which were nearly as cringy as my first videos.
Super
not
cringe.
quite.
Super cringe.
It's amazing. I remember in one of your recent videos, you were talking about looking back at some of your other work and watching how far you've started, how far you've gone since you've started. I recently spent about $2,000 on a YouTube course, and I got a lot out of it by watching how everyone in the YouTube space had to start somewhere. So it just sort of leads to those who are entering YouTube. So maybe not specifically in crypto itself, but just as an entrepreneur, what is some of the hardest things that you've come up against? Besides, or I'd like you to talk about this as well, some of those really negative comments out there. What's the hardest part about being an entrepreneur on YouTube?
I think the hardest part is facing the fact that there's going to be, or actually encountering peaks and troughs. So like I said, I just got very lucky with the timing when I started the channel, because as crypto went up, the interest in a cryptocurrency was like correlated with the price. So as media outlets were reporting on Bitcoin hitting the all-time highs, there was literally millions of people on the internet searching for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And so anyone that had a crypto channel, website, business, whatever it was, saw huge amounts of traffic. And I didn't quite fully comprehend how significant this was for my own channel until probably 6 months after that peak, when things really slowed down. And I had to come to terms with, like, hey, I got lucky. Like, now is when the really hard work starts. Now is when this is a grind. Now is when I'm up against everyone else. And despite how good I think my own quality content is, no one really cares. No one really cares unless they first see your content and they value you. You can't ever get into this mindset where, even though you think you know what you're doing, even though you think you've hit everything, you've just got to keep pushing. And one of the other massive things has been trial and error for me. So I've gone through all these periods with my own channel where I've thought, oh, maybe the audience wants highly polished edited content. Maybe the audience wants short videos. Maybe the audience wants long videos. And going through that process and not succeeding in terms of my own expectations after I went through those periods was really hard for me, because I'm a very competitive person. I'm very hard on myself. And that was very hard to deal with. The comments actually have been the least difficult. And the reason why is because I think just in my life experiences, my studies, my previous jobs, I can take a fair bit of flack and I hold myself accountable. So when people are negative, I also try and understand what they're saying from their perspective. Very, very rarely in life, this is my own philosophy, are people directly trying to attack you personally. There's something going on. They've the video, something you've said or something you've done has relates to an experience they've had at the time. And even if they are directly personal, it's kind of like, well, what have they said? Can I learn something from it? Have they said something that I can actually improve on? And I used a lot of the feedback just to improve my channel, and I found it hugely beneficial, actually. So they've probably not been the really the most difficult part. And probably the last thing I would say is, for anyone coming into this, don't expect to make a lot of money and expect it to just to be a grind. Expect it to be a grind. Ad revenue is nearly zero. If you are getting into a niche industry like cryptocurrency, especially in the current market, expect it to be slow. It's a grind. You've got to share your content. Do not expect it to be recommended. Do not expect everyone just to magically find you. They're not. You've got to be sharing it. You've got to be on Reddit, pushing it on Twitter, on Facebook groups. You've just got to grind, man.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention about the editing. For me, that's the wall I've hit at the moment. So when I first started, my ignorance was bliss, in the sense that I didn't have the technical skills, and was talking about this when we were off camera, about using the very cheap and nasty apps that you just sort of talk straight in. But then once I started picking up the skills of how to edit, I can shoot a video in 10 minutes, but then spend 6 hours, sometimes even 12 hours editing it to try and make it perfect. And then I'll get virtually no views off it. And then on the other hand, I can just freestyle something whilst driving my car and just press post, and it gets thousands of views. So I've noticed that you do a lot of freestyling. Does that mean that you pre-script? It looks like you're freestyling because you don't seem to do all the cuts that I'm doing in my editing. Do you pre-script it, or do you just research and speak freely?
I research and speak freely. So the only times I've ever done scripts is when I've done my really high production stuff. So I did like a 4-part series on Bitcoin, and that was all scripted because that was highly edited. And man, they were like a week's work per video. I had an editor actually helping me at that time. They were full on. But my last, probably the video since January, I just look at the material, get enough in my head, and just talk. And this is a great thing, like we were saying earlier about OBS, is you can hotkey different scenes or media or audio clips into OBS, and you can hotkey them, and it will just automatically play. So it looks like it's edited, but it's not. And then that saves you literally hours and hours and hours of time. And you're coming across more authentic and genuine. So I used to be real hard on myself when I'd make a mistake and I would re-record an entire video. Now I don't, because I just want to appear like I'm like everyone else, because I am. And I've found it seems to be resonating. The content seems to be resonating better with people as a result.
Yeah, I can remember in one of your recent videos, you mixed up the word bear market and
man, that annoyed me.
Oh, it was, and you did it 3 times.
Oh, it's so annoying. I listened back to it.
It's funny that you should mention you left it in there, because it's true. One of my subscribers, Nick, I won't say his last name, but he's been with me from day one, and even when I was doing terribly, and we actually speak over the phone now, and he was talking about how much the viewer appreciates the authenticity of those mistakes. And I've done it myself, and I've been in the same situation where I'm like, no, scrap the whole video, start again. But if you just sort of, as you did in that video, you just mentioned it in your comments, and it's like he was saying bear market when I think he meant a different type of market. People don't care, and
No.
and I agree. People actually enjoy that more, which sort of gets me back to some of the other channels. I noticed when I was up in Sydney speaking to a lot of the crypto goers there, it's amazing that some people will resonate with some YouTubers and, if you will, kind of hate other YouTubers. Some people just kind of click. So who's your kind of my mentor indirectly? So who mentors you, either directly or indirectly?
Well, you know, that's a good question. So I took a lot of my inspiration actually from people not in the crypto space because,
Right.
yeah. So, look, I can't think of any. I mean, PewDiePie is a guy that I've watched for a long time. You know, I think he's a cool guy. I took a lot of inspiration from him. Crypto Daily actually, I got a bit of inspiration from at the beginning. I must say, because he has a good artistic taste. But generally, I watch a lot of content on YouTube. I don't watch much crypto content anymore, unless it's just from just kind of a few people. But I just took inspiration from as many people as I could. Peter McKinnon was another one. I mean, this is a guy that just does photography and videography, and I just thought his content was really cool. So I would just take inspiration from all these people, and then, you know, I would test things. Like I said before, I've tested many different styles just to kind of see how the audience reacts. What's the engagement like? What are the comments like? And I will actually say, I should have said that during the last response, but the editing, as fun as it can be a slippery slope. You know, you mentioned that you've spent 6 to 12 hours. The crazy thing is the time spent in relation to the output can be exponential. The more you want to do, you'll find yourself starting to use I used Adobe Premiere Pro, and then I would started getting into After Effects, which is doing animations, just really basic animations, and you start getting burnout. Your burnout starts to kick in, and so you really need to find a balance that works for you, but also works for the audience as well. Otherwise, if burnout does kick in, like it did for me, I was severely burnt out at one point. You know, you actually put your whole channel in jeopardy. So I think it's really important to find that balance for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When you get into that, I guess in economics terms, you probably say the law of diminishing returns, in the sense that the more you put in, you're not really getting more out of it. In fact, you get the opposite. And I agree with you, because there's been times that I could have just shot a video, but because I was so worried about, I'm like, oh, I don't have 12 hours to edit it, even though the content was 5 minutes. I just didn't put it out at all. And then when I looked at the algorithms of YouTube, which were constantly changing, you know, at one stage it was the number of views that you got, but now, as I understand it, it's the number of minutes that you get. The more minutes that you put out there, the more likely you're to be, if you will, slotted to the top. So do you put a time on your videos, or do you just say what needs to be said and go from there?
I just say what needs to be said. Early on, I tried to keep them under 10 minutes. I think sometimes I even trialed doing it under 5 minutes, but now since January, I just say what I need to say, because touching on your point you made before about how people have different channels they love or they hate, what that actually is the person behind the brand. It's the person behind the channel. So this is the crazy but amazing thing about social media and YouTube is it's you being you, right? And so people resonate with the authentic person behind the camera. And so that's generally why people will find people that they really like or they really don't like, is because it's all about the story. It's all about the story. It's all about the person. And, you know, some things that I've found as well, you know, there's been times I've been afraid to be vulnerable and maybe admit mistakes or admit my own personal failures or admit things that I wasn't happy with. But you come away after you share those things not only feeling better about yourself just for being honest, but you find you get a really good response from the audience as well. And in relation to the algorithm too, that is, I understand, a number of factors. So YouTube really likes engagement. Engagement is measured by watch time. So how long does a single person watch your video for? It's comments, it's likes and dislikes. And then YouTube looks at all these different things. Click through as well. For thumbnails are actually quite important, because YouTube will measure the click-through rate of when I show this thumbnail to someone, what is the percentage of people that actually click through on that thumbnail. So all these things combined, it can be really overwhelming when you're first researching how to best optimize your channel to get noticed. It can be extremely overwhelming, but if you can just hit a few of these key things, you're putting yourself in a better stead for YouTube to recommend your content to others.
Do those dislikes hurt the channel? I've thought about that with the dislikes. So say you're looking at a political topic. I've noticed that sometimes when I see a channel that has a political topic and everyone loves the presenter, everyone loves the channel, but I've noticed that sometimes when they talk about a topic that is like, I don't know, well, I just planes flying into a building, and they say this is really bad, and they give a thumbs down to that video, they're not saying, I think, that the video is bad, but just it's bad that planes flew into a building. And I think from what I've picked up that some people, they actually like your video and they agree that what you've said is a bad thing, so they give it a thumbs down. Have you experienced that? And that does that hurt a channel?
You know, it's funny you say that. I remember late last year, there was it might have been the Bitcoin series. I put on all this work and I was so proud of it, and then I published it, and one of the videos in particular got a few dislikes, and I was kind of had this warped sense of reality because a lot of my videos I had gotten really good like to dislike ratios, and I like to keep that. I was thinking, you know, people love my content, and so I did one video and I got a few dislikes and I was shattered. I said to my wife, I said, what is going on? I'm shattered. I think this content is amazing. I think so. I've put in all this work. And she said, babe, it's not about that. It's actually because of something you said in the video. That's what they're disliking. It's not so much you or the content. And if it was, and even if it is, who cares? But it's something you said in the video. Whether or not it hurts a channel, I don't know. I think YouTube's algorithm is pretty smart, and it's going to use standard deviations, and it's going to use medians to cut out outliers. So if there's a particular video on a usually a really good channel that might get a few dislikes, I don't think that's going to hurt your channel. And maybe a lot of dislikes are actually part of the showing that there's engagement. So maybe it sees that as a good thing.
Agreed. I've thought that because, you know, it's like that story, bad news sometimes sells, you know, so maybe the fact that everyone's getting really fired up and clicking like or dislike,
well, maybe,
who knows?
Maybe.
And noting that they often change the algorithm as well, as I was mentioned before.
Yeah,
before it was just clicks, and then it's what it is now, and it'll probably change a bit later. So it makes me wonder, have you ever thought about turning off the comments and likes and dislikes? I can't see the advantage in doing that. No. So I know this is really YouTube focused at the moment, but a lot of the people are actually wondering, how do you build these numbers like you have so quickly?
Look,
besides the great content.
I just got lucky, man. It was just the time that I got in. You go and look at any, like, to prove my point from a data perspective, after this video, go to socialblade.com. This is a free website that you can measure YouTube metrics, and type in all the major any crypto YouTube channel you know, make sure it's crypto, and look at the line chart of views and subscribers over time, and they are all highly correlated to during the last bull market. And you will see all of us got really, were just fortunate when we made a channel. Obviously some grew a lot quicker than others. That's because they had great content. They were posting often, people resonated with their message, and not taking anything away from them in that. But you will actually also see everyone's channels have massively dropped off in views and subscribers since the bear market. I mean, it is highly correlated. Like, just as a crypto business right now, many are struggling to make revenue. It's just the same as channels in regards to views and subscribers.
Did you feel that loss of subscriptions when we had that, I call it the great crash of 2017, 18?
Yeah, my subscribers were going down. My subscribers were going down. I lost.
Me too.
I lost maybe 150 to 200. I won't say which channels, but I've looked into other channels that have lost thousands and thousands because people were watching crypto for price action, for new projects, for learning about the technology. And when the bear market crashed, a lot of people were just like, I've had enough. I just want to walk away from crypto. It's too stressful. I've been burned, unsubscribe. And that makes total sense. I want to just touch on your point earlier about the likes, disabling the likes and dislikes and comments. I personally would never do that for a couple of reasons. One, I love YouTube's free market. I love that. I love that if a video's crap, it gets disliked. If it's good, it gets liked. Very rarely are likes, dislikes, and comments gamed. Very rarely. I love being held accountable. If my video sucks, people are going to let me know. That's the free market, man. And I would never want to take that away, even from myself, even if it means I get burned one day. Oh, well, I should have done better. So I think it's a really good feature. And I have seen, rarely you see channels that disable that. And just think, what are you doing? You need to, people need to see the message in the comments. And if comments are being gamed, people that have been following that channel for a while are going to see that anyway. They're going to see these comments and go, oh, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole free market of crypto and the decentralization and the power to the people. And that, for me, I thought that when I was losing subscribers, I actually I think we all went through it, especially if you're in the ICOs. I mean, I remember when you first started your channel, you did a lot of heavy investment into ICO reviews, and that helped me a lot because it saved me doing the reviews. You did them for me. But I think what was happening is because the whole ICO space went, belly up and a lot of people lost a lot of money. I think that sometimes when they saw a notification come up saying crypto, it was almost like revisiting trauma for some people that had invested and lost so much money. Not only did they not want to hear it, but they actively wanted to create barriers to stop talking about it. Did you get any haters saying, like, did anyone blame you ever after? I know you never gave financial advice, but has anyone, even off your channel, it's sort of leading to one of my questions that I've got here is about the haters. So on my channel, I have a thing called sauna talk. So I spend a lot of time in the gym. After the gym, I go to the sauna and I have great conversations about everything in life, including crypto. And in the sauna, it's a mixed gym. So I see old, young, male, female. And in Canberra, I get a lot of high-ranking public servants who think they know everything. And what I found is that when we had that huge drop at, the beginning of 2018 and into 2017, people who I'd been talking about this almost went out of their way to say, haha, Adam, I told you so, you were wrong. And it was like people were so excited about what they thought was failure, where I was saying, hey, people buy when there's blood in the street. Did you lose any friends over that?
No. And on your first point, no, I haven't. And the reason I think it is because I'm a pretty conservative guy by nature, and how I conduct myself. And I think I'm a pretty rational, objective person. That's come from my previous career. It's come from being a project manager. You've got to know your stuff. You've got to be good at what you do, and you can't shoot your mouth off. So I was lucky in that. And I only ever did a couple of ICO reviews very early on. You'll find that most of my other reviews were SWOT reviews of existing projects. And I did that strategically because I wanted to move away from the ICO space, because it was getting crazy and I was just like, I want to move away. So I was very rational, objective. I was always transparent. And I think that boded in my favor during the long term. On the outside, did I lose any friends? No, I didn't. And I think the reason why is because my conviction has not changed. I back myself and I stand by my belief in where this is going in the future. I have deep, deep conviction to the point where I myself am heavily invested in this. I've spent 2 years in this. I've spent over a year now full-time in crypto. I've gone and spoken at conferences. I back myself. And let me say this. We cannot call this space. You cannot say this is a win or a fail until 10 years down the track. We can't.
Agreed.
We can't do it. So people who might say things like, oh, Bitcoin's failed or whatever, so what? I mean, what's your time horizon? Like when you're looking at traditional stocks and securities, it's a 10 to 15 year time horizon. People in crypto just have a warped sense of time. So, I have deep conviction, and I think that's actually rubbed off on people in my close inner circle.
And even on that, I dug in further as well. Like if anyone was like, oh, you failed, and of course I always, as we do in the space, especially after the whole BitConnect saga, you don't give financial advice, and it was a good example for everyone who got in there early. Just avoid giving that financial advice. But when people say to me, how do you feel about Bitcoin being down? I say, well, comparative to what? Because comparative to the last 10 years, it's thousands of % up. So what do you mean down? And not only that, even if you say you're a day trader, which I'm not, but there are many people who are, even in that fall, they could still make returns greater than, traditional stocks where you're getting 5% per annum. You can make 5% per hour if you're doing it right, and time and place. But what sort of makes me dig in even further, even when you read, when I was doing my Masters of Business, they were talking a lot, and I've always invested on traditional stocks, and we watch about this 5% per annum. And that's a good return because you've got inflation or just a normal saving. So you've got to beat 2%. If you don't beat 2%, you're not even meeting inflation. If you just break even at 2%, you're kind of just sitting stagnant, which is why some people, including myself, move some of their money into precious metals, if anything, just to avoid inflation. But once you get up to 5%, which is like, let's face it, traditional stocks, then you're kind of only making 3%. And 3% on an investment is virtually nothing. So that's why I actually got into mining, which I'm going to ask you about mining. Have you ever got into mining, whether it be ASIC mining, desktop mining, or cloud mining? It's probably too late for desktop mining. But did you invest in Genesis or any of those cloud miners?
No, I never did. And I looked into it. Setting up your own mining hardware and equipment to begin with requires a lot of upfront capital. Yep. Here in Australia, as you know, electricity is not cheap. So unless you have a 50 megawatt solar farm out the back with some excess energy that they're looking to siphon off, and your house is pretty close, it's very unlikely it's going to be profitable here in Australia. With the cloud mining thing, I found that difficult to understand for quite a while until I really looked into it and researched it and understood it. But the argument remains: are you better off just buying the coins outright? I mean, it's a lower risk. Yeah. You own the coins. I think everyone's obviously got a different risk profile, but for me, in terms of simplicity is part of my assessment process as well. What is just simple? I think just buying the coins and holding it, to me, was always the better option than going down the mining route.
Mate, I tend to agree. I guess lucky. I've got a fairly big property with that solar farm you talk about, and it was in my early days on the channel. I was actually more mining focused because I actually really enjoyed the hobby. I've got a big property. I've got extra solar panels and storage. I actually made it part of the part of the mining project was to upgrade my solar. I doubled my solar. I put in 3-phase power. I had 16 ASIC miners. I still got them, and in fact, all my Litecoin miners are mining right now as we speak. But I had to evolve my mining farm to, first of all, when it was crashing, I shut it down, as a lot of people did. The difficulty went up, the electricity also went up, and the returns was very little. So I actually shut down this entire farm. But then when all the cloud mining companies went sort of belly up, the difficulty went down, which made the profitability go up to a certain extent. And it combined with the fact that the prices went up as well, we had this kind of perfect reverse storm of, I had cheap electricity because of my massive solar farm and batteries. The difficulty went down because the cloud miners went out of business. The price was going up just because of the cycle of the market. So I've turned on all my Litecoin miners, which actually are almost cost neutral because I'm running it off a solar system that I have that I can pretty much generate what I use during the day. But at night, I turn them off. At night, I have to shut it all down because there's no return. But I tend to agree with you. I think in the big picture, although I like to diversify in everything I do, because I've also got a lot of gold and silver, I agree. I think buying to hold, and I remember one of your videos, you basically, you don't trade, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't do this day trading or week trading.
No.
You're basically like the majority of the community, which is, I think I put myself in there now. We just hold, baby. We just buy. We get it off exchanges, and thank you for all your work with that as well, especially with Trezors. You taught me how to use a ledger. So
Good.
Yeah, and once I saw that video, I went out and bought one and put it on, and then paper wallets and diversified everywhere to get it off exchanges. On the point of exchanges, I was also with you in the journey for CoinSpot. So CoinSpot's been very good to me. I got in early, and maybe you did as well. And stop me if you're not comfortable talking about the affiliates with that, but you inspired me to get the affiliates there, and I have lots of affiliates on CoinSpot, which has done very well for me. Have you enjoyed the affiliate life of CoinSpot? And if so, are there others?
Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you something funny. When I started YouTubing, it wasn't until I'd done about 10 videos that I even learned what an affiliate link was.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I'm like, what? I can just post a link and someone can sign up to something. It costs them nothing, but I can earn a little bit of revenue. I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. And then I learned that people literally do just affiliate marketing. Right, so I was like, this is fantastic. Here's this thing that costs the person nothing. If it's a good product that you use yourself, that you recommend, you have the integrity ticked off, you can earn a little bit on the side as well. So that was amazing. Was it good? Absolutely. Has it basically gone to zero, as you would have known? Yes, it has. Other good ones. Yeah, I think Ledger was doing like 10% on hardware wallets for a while. I don't think if it's still that, but that was in euros, so that was all right for a little while. I think Trezor was about the same. Binance was very good for a while. Binance was like, a lot of people don't realize this, but one of the reasons Binance grew so big so quick was their affiliate program. They were doing
50%, wasn't it?
It was 50%, and
Yeah.
and it was, I think it was paid in Bitcoin at the time. I don't think it is anymore. It's paid on different coins now. So one of the reasons Binance went so viral was because of their generous affiliate program. So I think it's fantastic, and it's one way us guys in crypto can make a little bit of revenue on the side, because as you would know, ad revenue is basically nothing.
Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's the old business model. People get into YouTube, thinking that they'll make money off ad revenue, and it's just not the way to do it. It's
No.
this affiliate marketing, I think, is such a win-win. And on affiliates, there's three types of affiliates. I think the worst one is something like Amway, where you actually have to pay every month. You have to give a certain amount of money to get any commission. So I don't know if you realize some of these affiliates, it's criminal in the sense that we'll go right at the bottom. So with Amway, if you say I sold $10,000 worth of dishwashing liquid, I wouldn't actually get any commission off that until I spent about $250 roughly every month myself. So the only way I can make money off those affiliates in those sort of, I almost call them pyramids, is to in fact spend my own money. And in those affiliate programs, the companies aren't growing, in fact, from selling dishwashing liquid. They're making money from A, selling the training, and B, making all their sellers spend money every month. Then you've got the second type of affiliate, which was like the Trezors and an object that you sell at once, and the one sale, you get a little commission off that. But then the third type, which is I probably discovered around the same time as you, just in parallel, was this amazing thing where, hey, if I put this link on my video and someone clicks on that link, it makes absolutely no difference to their application process whatsoever. But not only do I get a commission today, but I get a commission forever. And I think it was so effective in growing both CoinSpot and Binance that it's a win-win situation. I really like those models where it's a win-win, where you and I as the battler out there put in hard work, make a good video, take the risk, and put it out there, including our reputation, and they get free labor, if you will, but spread their word very quickly, their brand very quickly. In fact, CoinSpot was so successful that they've actually cut their affiliate thing now. So they'll still pay you and me and others who got in early, and I really respect CoinSpot because they're Australian as well, and they got in there early and they spread their brand and they grew very quickly. But it was so effective that they actually had to stop it. So now we move into the new space of making money. And I thank you. I want to thank you publicly for the information you gave me on Lisk. So I don't think people understand the benefits of coins. Most people think the only way you can make money in crypto is, buy low, sell high. But could you give us a bit of a rundown on things like gas and Lisk and staking, where you buy today, even Skycoin. In fact, if you wouldn't mind mentioning something about Skycoin, because I got in that early. I spent a lot on Skycoin, and yes, the price has dropped, but in the background, the Sky hours have been really ticking away. And it's the same with Neo Gas. Do you recommend any other coins? And can you tell us a bit about how this gas and staking works?
Sure. First on Skycoin, to be honest, I don't know enough about it to comment. I would say my knowledge is basically zero on Skycoin. In regards to other coins and gas, excuse me. Yeah, so there's some fantastic opportunities. So it really comes down to first people just understanding proof of stake, right? And the difference between proof of stake and proof of work. But without going into detail, it's just a different consensus mechanism for validation of blocks. You're paying someone for contributing something, right? You're paying someone for contributing something to the network. In Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Monero, it's electricity in the form of computational power. In proof of stake, you don't have computational power, but you have you essentially have someone's stake. Someone is putting up their own coins as collateral. So for certain protocols, such as, I believe Neo and Lisk are pretty the same. They've got, I think, 101 delegates, which is essentially a node. And then people can vote for these delegates. So they try to have like a decentralized, democratized system of who gets to be a delegate and thus get the most rewards. So they have this voting system where depending on the performance of that particular delegate, and performance is measured in server uptime, depending on that is who is going to get the vote. Now, these delegates can also choose how much they pay out, how much proportion of their own revenue in additional coins, which is new block rewards, are they going to pay out. Now, one thing that's really important for people to understand as we move into more maturity of the crypto space is there's going to be protocols that are proof of stake that are going to do very well in the future. If you are buying a certain coin for long-term price appreciation, by staking it as well, because you're just going to have it sitting there, you're earning additional rewards, which are then going to earn a return on them in the future, should the market go up, right? There's no past performance, there's no guarantee of the future. But not only are you getting rewards that are going to appreciate, that is essentially like an automated system of dollar cost averaging, except it's not dollar cost averaging because you're not buying any extra, but you've also got your existing stack that you bought that is going to appreciate as well. So you've kind of got this compounding effect that can happen, and the more rewards you get in that stake, the higher your proportion of rewards is going to get. So your rewards are going to go up over time as more rewards come into your wallet. Disregarding price, your initial stack is going up, and if price appreciates as well, which of course we all hope it does, you could be very successful in this.
Do you think Bitcoin hex? Do you know about Richard Hart's Bitcoin hex?
Look, I know a little bit about it. Probably not enough to really comment on it.
Yeah, I did a So it's my two biggest videos have actually been on Skycoin, and I spent a lot of time researching that, and I actually, the Skycoin themselves took my video and reposted it on their channel. And at first I thought, hang on, that's a bit cheeky. But because they linked it back to me, I'm like, oh, well, crypto community. And it's a compliment, the fact that Skycoin themselves have said, check out Adam Stokes and his video. I'm like, oh, wow. And so that was good. And then also with Bitcoin Hex, which is now just called Hex, it was actually leveraging off what you've said there, was this. Richard has said it's his first coin of the type, and it's actually not. There's similar ones to it, but it is the first type where they're basically saying, hey, if you've got Bitcoin at this date, show us that you've got this Bitcoin in this address, and we will match X amount of hexes for every Bitcoin that you've got. And then if you stake that for a certain amount of time, you'll get interest on that. And it's an amazing concept because he's not actually selling this coin. There's no ICO, there's no fundraising, there's nothing except show me that you've got Bitcoin and we will give you a certain amount of these coins, and make your own affiliate link and we'll give you 20% more. And it'll be a very fascinating, I think, case study for all of crypto space, because no one has ever done anything like this, ever. What is your thoughts on we touched on this earlier, but I really want to get into it because it is really big at the moment in the crypto space. What are your thoughts on what Craig Wright is doing? Like, let's just war game this for a second. If he wrote that white paper that's behind you, that's the Bitcoin white paper behind you, isn't it?
Correct.
If he had written that, why would he have kept it a secret at first and then later said, yeah, this is me? And also, why are so many people backing him up on either way, saying he did do it or he didn't do it, but still support him? What are your thoughts on that, noting the good video you recently released on that?
Well, look, to be honest, I can't speak for Craig, and I can't jump into his mind and understand what's making it tick and why he's made the decisions that he's made. That's not my place. In regards to kind of what's happening with the situation now, was that the second part of the question?
Yeah, why are people so adamant on backing him up?
Sure. Well, this is something it's a good question. So Craig has been around in this for a long time. No one can take that away from him. He's been around in this space for a long time, and he's been commenting on Bitcoin both in a media sense and in a more professional sense with his consultancy Endchain for many, many years. So he has the credibility as being an OG straight away, and at least from the surface, he's very knowledgeable in Bitcoin too.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. Hey?
Yeah, there's no taking that away from him. I think the second part comes down to the proof side, and this is where it starts getting very technical. And you have to have a lot of the people commenting on this in a legal sense, and you know what I mean by that, have a high degree of knowledge in cryptography. Man, we're talking very knowledgeable people that can understand down to an nth degree what is going on with the signature side of things. And I think the reason some people are on either side comes down to that. And it's complicated. Let's be honest, it's very complicated. And if it does go to court, this is what is going to be the thing that settles it. What will surprise me though is what will be the technical proficiency of the people in the court understanding the materials that they're seeing.
Yeah, I was thinking that. How do you prove? I mean, cryptographers talk about it, how they would actually prove if he was Satoshi or not. And of course, other people, outspoken people, have proven that he's not Satoshi. But I was thinking about that. If this did go to court, can you imagine trying to prove or disprove it? And ultimately, imagine, let's say it did prove through, let's just say there was unqualified people in the courtroom who said, yeah, given the probability of this, we'll call him Satoshi. Then he could actually, I doubt it would happen, but let's just say it did. A courtroom would give this guy the title of Satoshi. But I still don't know what the benefit for that would be. Besides, let's just say your ego aside, what is the benefit of being Satoshi Nakamoto?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think there is one, man. I really don't.
Why do you think he did it initially? Why do you think he went anonymous? Not Craig, but Satoshi.
Because he knew the impact that Bitcoin was going to have on society. A bit like this I think a number of people were involved personally, and I have some reasons behind that. But whoever or whatever group or whatever person, whoever came up with Bitcoin had an astounding level of knowledge in many subject matter, in many subject areas. This was highly complicated. This was a very strategic individual. The dates that Bitcoin went live, Satoshi's birthday, these all have meaning if you look into them. If you follow people like Trace Mayer, who's been talking about Bitcoin since 2010, recommend everyone go and listen to Trace Mayer's early podcast if they really want to know deep down some of what's going on behind the scenes. But when you look at it in that detail, Satoshi knew the impact this could have, and potentially even on himself and his own well-being if the person was found out to be Satoshi. Because, Bitcoin is a massive threat to central banks. Yeah. So, I certainly wouldn't want to be that person. So I think that's why it was done under a pseudonym.
I've thought about that a lot, actually. Of course, the Godfather, Andreas Antonopoulos. So I listen to this guy religiously because and I'd love to talk to him. And my first question would be to him, are you Satoshi? Which of course he would say no. But in one of my videos that I made about him, one of my subscribers wrote to me and said, Adam, do you think anyone will try and kill Andreas? And if you actually look at the history of Kennedy and Lincoln, as I understand it, Kennedy and Lincoln, conspiracy theory here, but if you look at the history of money, they realized the danger of fractional reserve lending and centralized banking, and they challenged it. Now, chance or coincidence, conspiracy theory, whatever. At the end of the day, both those presidents were assassinated. And it goes back to what you were saying, that if I was Satoshi, I wouldn't want anyone to know either, because it would literally put your life at risk. Because everything has evolved over the last 200 years. I'm quoting from Andreas now, subparagraphing. Everything in the world has progressed except for the banking system. The banking system has remained stagnant. And Bitcoin is so powerful that it basically it shifts the money. It shifts the money from this very small population at the top, whether that's a good or a bad thing or just the laws of nature, and it puts it into someone else's hands. Similar to like when the printing press was first created, they were worried about the distribution of knowledge. And then you had newspapers and magazines, and then the internet and the distribution of knowledge. And then you had Bitcoin. And now you've got the redistribution of money. And I genuinely wonder the risks to the people who speak about crypto. Are you familiar with Andreas, and have you ever considered some of the dangers he faces? Because he doesn't hold back. He takes the banks head on. In some of his talks, he inspires me so much because he's just so straightforward. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Andreas is an amazing guy, man. I've read one of his books too. I've got some more to read. I've been waiting for Mastering Ethereum to come out on Audible, actually. He's an awesome dude, and he spoke in front of the Australian Senate about Bitcoin back in 2014.
I saw that, and weren't we pathetic? Comparative to how we spoke at the Canadian Senate. Did you see both those sittings?
I didn't see the Canadian one, no.
Oh, mate, you have to watch it. The Canadians did, sorry to interrupt you, but the Canadians had each one of their senators sit down and ask him questions from the basic, if you will, dumbest questions out there to the highest level questions. And then the Australian Senate, I was embarrassed comparative to watch how, we didn't even know what we were asking. But sorry, crack on.
Yeah, look, man, that you raise a point there about the complexity of crypto. And I tell people all the time, this is complicated. Go easy on yourself. This is complicated stuff. Don't be hard on yourself if you don't understand it straight away. It's a paradigm shift in so many different areas. And in the future, people aren't going to need to know how this works. They're not going to want to know how it works. It's just going to work. So that's how we know we're at the very beginning of this, because everyone in this game still, to some degree, needs to know how this works before they're willing to put their money in, or at least they should. Most of them do. In regards to risks, I think the risks are pretty much gone now. It's too widespread. It's too mainstream. There are banks now coming up with their own coins. Cryptocurrencies are becoming mainstream and will continue to become mainstream in the future. I think there would have been a greater degree of risk earlier on if the identity or identities of Bitcoin came out. I think personally there are still some risks, and that's when you start getting really deep down into the existing financial system. Digging really deep into some of the subversive laws that have been passed. It gets pretty heavy. And it's quite depressing research, actually, because the only thing that makes sense in your mind as to why this stuff has been passed is because it's part of a greater plan. That's really, to me, is, especially when you look into bail-in laws. I mean, this is heavy stuff, man. This is heavy stuff, and everyone should at least. I just published a blog on our website about it. Everyone should at least just understand what it means, how it's been used in the past, and how it's likely going to be used in the future, and how to protect yourself with stuff like crypto.
I think I think it was Henry Ford that said, I'll paraphrase terribly here, but he basically said if people understood how fractional reserve lending worked and the reserve banks, there would be rioting in the street. And I'm kind of embarrassed. I've mentioned this before. One of my degrees is economics. And even later, when I got a master's in business, I still didn't truly understand fractional reserve lending and the corruption of centralized banking systems, legitimately corrupt, metaphorically, legally, socially, at every level. It is just, and economically corrupt. It's market failure. It is market failure when you just have a printing press pumping out heaps of money. But what's kind of embarrasses me in this whole journey, but liberates me in crypto, was truly understanding money because of crypto. Without crypto, I never actually would have learnt I don't think any of this. I just probably would have carried on my way, buying properties and being a good worker and paying my taxes, and not truly understanding that every time I bought a house, I was in fact contributing directly to the inflation and the degradation of my investment, of not just my property investment, but the money that I had locked up in the bank.
And everyone else's as well.
Yeah, everyone else's. And that's why I also feel bad about this, because the more properties I bought, the more I was contributing. And of course, I'm not a Donald Trump in the sense that I've got hotels all over the world, nothing by that means, but we're all responsible, especially in Australia. As you know, part of the plan in the West is you buy a property, you pay it off, and then everyone's going to live happily ever after, but you're actually chipping away at your own money.
Yeah. This is something that's, when you're touching on the point of money, that's what it really comes down to with crypto. And I always come back to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the hardest money. It's like especially from a layman with the economics background, you would have no doubt understood Keynesian theory, probably very, very well by the end of your degree. But then getting into Austrian economics and the foundations of hard money, and how societies that have been on hard monies in the past have always prospered. And it's so simple in your mind, because you have something that's a scarce resource that requires human capital in terms of work, right? And at its most fundamental level is energy, is joules to produce something. And because it requires work and it's scarce and it's hard, it has hardness in terms of work required to produce it, it is going to have intrinsic value. And you even then come, I highly recommend everyone read The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Amos. I mean, that is probably in my top 3 books of all time. You even come down to time preference, and how the psychology of a society changes depending on what their money system is. So when you have societies in the past that have been on hard, sound money, you have less crime, you have less war, you have less poverty. Why? Because everyone wants to see the value of their holdings, of their savings, increase over time. So they don't want conflict. And governments can't go to war because they have limited funds in their treasuries. They can't just print off money to go to war. So governments are held accountable for their economic policy. They can't afford to be frivolous with their money. So you have a complete psychological shift in society based on the money, and it can affect so many things, and it comes down to time preference. So, time preference being, how long in the future am I thinking for me and my family and my current financial situation? If I hold this coin, if I buy some Bitcoin, or in the past it might have been gold, or it might have been rice stones, if I hold this for 20, 30 years, I do the right thing, I work hard, I don't get into any conflicts, the value of this should appreciate over time, thus benefiting my family and generations to come. So you have this entire shift in how society operates, and I just think it's a fascinating subject matter. And I'm still just a noob in Austrian economics, an absolute noob. I have a ton of research to do, but I think this is the way we're going to go, and we're going to go about this through Bitcoin.
Agreed entirely. My friend, we've hit the hour mark. I really appreciate everything that you've done for the crypto space. Again, for my subscribers, Beau is from Cryptocurrency Australia. He's been in the space for at least 2 years and has inspired me immensely. I'm Adam Stokes. Think about giving us a like and subscribe. Beau, thank you very much for your time here. I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, look, Adam, thanks so much, mate. And on a personal note, thank you for being such a great supporter and follower, and for taking the time out of your day to leave the comments, and touching base with me and saying that I've helped you in some way. I really appreciate that. It's easy to forget sometimes when you're getting views that there is sometimes potentially just a single person behind each of those. And so when people do put in the time and effort to reach out and to comment or authentic like you, I think that really goes a long way, and I really appreciate that. And also for the questions in the interview, they were well thought out, and got me thinking. So hey man, I appreciate your time, and thanks again for having me on.
It's an honor. Thank you, my friend. Go
Cheers.
crypto.
Go crypto. See you guys.